Alright, what's up, Dragon Brood? Today we're actually going to be talking about Ikoria previews. There is a lot. Normally we get about 2 weeks for them to show us all the cards for a new set, but this time we're doing it in like 10 days or something. Not even that long. I think it's like 8 days. So I'm going to go through some of the cards that have caught my eye a little bit and just talk a little bit about which ones I think are cool, because there's a lot. And I'm probably going to do this daily since they've been coming out so quick. So we're going to catch up on everything that's come out today, which is April 4th. Man, being at home for a while really makes the days blend together. And then we're going to go back to April 2nd when they started previewing them. Before we do that, why don't you hit the subscribe button if you hadn't, and like this video while you're at it. I'll get everything else set up in the meantime. Okay, this card is just fun. I mean, I can see so many ways this is going to get played in several commander decks. I can see how the Fiend Artisan is going to maybe play in some standard decks. Like, this is just cool. Okay, first off, it gives you a +1/+1 for each creature in your graveyard. So this can also be used in aggro decks, say, because it has split mana. Say something like Gruul maybe could actually play this against the control deck. So after they've killed 3, 4, 5 of your things, you get a 2 mana 5/5 or 2 mana 6/6. Like, that's really powerful. And then it gives you the option of sacrificing another creature to go find something else. So if you can go find a utility card, say maybe you want to upgrade your Gruul Spellbreaker into an Anax because it's X or less, so you can just take equal cost, play it, boom, now you have protection from a Wrath again. So there's so many little things going on with this card that are just outstanding. Like, I'm sure I'm not even on the tip of the iceberg for all the realistic applications of something like this, but it's definitely one that gets me excited to play. Okay, this card is just wild, right? Okay, so I'm already telling you, like, this could easily be a commander favorite. I mean, the fact that not only are you able to get creatures back, you're getting them to the battlefield, and 10 power or less is not a small number. I mean, that could usually be 3 or 4 creatures. I mean, those can also have come into play triggers. And then not only that, when you mutate it, you're actually giving something else Death Touch and Lifelink. I mean, this is strong. And worst case scenario, you're paying 5 for a 5/5 just to get the creature as it is. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this card. Even if you just play it straight up as the creature that it is, a 5/5 Lifelink Death Touch is actually pretty strong against a lot of board states. So now, how popular? I don't know, because it's likely a card you can't play more than 2 of in a deck, realistically. But it's definitely something that's going to find a home in Commander with little to no effort. Alright, I'm just going to tell people straight up right now, you can expect me to play a Gem Razor. I mean, it's amazing. It's a 4/4 for 4 with only 1 green. It has Reach and Trample, which is also awesome. 2 good abilities that are useful. It has Mutate for 3, which for those of you who don't know, okay, so obviously the text is there and lets you know you can mutate onto a non-human creature. That part's pretty self-explanatory. But if they go to kill the creature that you're trying to mutate onto, you get your creature for the mutate cost. So this means that you're almost always going to get a 4/4. Worst case scenario, if you mutate for 3, you're going to get either a 3 cost 4/4, or you're going to get a 3 cost 4/4 trample, reach, whatever abilities thing, right? And you get to kill an artifact or enchantment on top of it. This card's pretty cool. I mean, it makes sense that it's a rare. It's a card that you can probably even play just 4 copies of. Just because if nothing else, great. You just have more aggro creatures that you can hit with. If not, you get the versatility of having an enchantment or artifact removal. These are the types of cards I really dig because they're just versatile in what they allow you to do. This one I just wanted to include because, well, it's a giant turtle. But seriously, just so you know, I wanted to make sure I mentioned at least one of these because cycling's back. And for you who don't know, cycling, just pay the cost, you discard a card, you get to draw a card. This is cool because it actually lets you play it for free if you cycle it or one of these 4 times in a game, which is pretty neat. So whenever you cycle it, you shuffle it in and you get to use it over and over. So it's really pretty cool, and it's actually a reasonable card. It's a 7 cost 8/8 with trample and haste. So if you do get it late in the game, you do get to just blast for 8 for 7 mana, which isn't bad. It's just an interesting card. How good, I don't know, but if I just needed something to kind of smooth out my draws and maybe wanted a late game play, I would consider it. Just not sure what decks would want it right now, because as long as Embercleave's around, the aggro decks are obviously going to want to play that as their top end card and just try to end the game instead of waiting to a point where Yadaro actually matters. Okay, Mythos of Troy is an interesting card because of the way it's worded. So this is one I think confused people when I was talking about it with some people on social media. So you destroy target non-land permanent if it's a creature, or if green-white was spent to cast the spell. So it's funny how it's worded, right? You destroy target non-land permanent if it's a creature, or you destroy target non-land permanent if you also spent green and white to cast it. So you'd have to basically pay green, red, white to destroy target non-land permanents, or you can just pay green and 2 colorless to destroy a non-land permanent if it's a creature. So I mean, it's a little interesting how that sets up, but it even took me a couple times to read it and go like, what does that mean? Like, okay, destroy target non-land permanent kind of almost should read as though like comma if it's a creature, or destroy target non-land permanent if you paid green white to cast it. So in some ways it kind of works like some of the past green black white cards that, you know, destroy stuff, but it is an instant, which actually gives a little bit more flexibility. So another interesting card. If you're playing it in the right deck, it's probably really good. Also gives you a way to remove some artifacts and enchantments in black, which you don't get that often, but you would be playing green-white, so there's those options anyway. But maybe not. Maybe you're splashing something that gives you green and white mana, or white mana, I guess, that allows you to cast this, but who knows. It's just one of those interesting cards that the wording in the set is very peculiar, and I figured I would bring that up because Magic sometimes is its own language, and you have to word cards a very specific way, or they don't make sense at all and don't do anything. Okay, this card is crazy, right? So it's kind of a little bit of a defense against creature kill spells, in the sense that every time you have something die that's a non-token, you get to flip 2 cards and then return something cheaper than it to your hand from the graveyard. So in a way, there's kind of like diminishing returns, right? Like if you lose your 4 mana thing, then you can get a 3 mana thing out of the graveyard if there's one, and then if you play that and then that dies, you can get a 2. But it's one of those things, it's a perpetual stream of creatures, which could be really nice. And then you get the bonus of just sacrificing it at some point if you just need to gain life. Where does it fit right now? I don't know, but it's the type of card, especially with some of the others that we've talked about already, that it could find a home and actually be the centerpiece of a deck in and of itself. It also doesn't say that, you know, it has to die because of something your opponent does. Like, you could be sacrificing it to something to get an ability to also get a creature out of the graveyard, which maybe gives you a thing that you want to discard from your hand. Like, who knows? It may not even be a standard application. It could be something that's good in Pioneer or Modern. It just gives you more options to use creatures over and over again. And then it's also giving you cards from multiple resources, right? Like, you're milling stuff from your deck. That might be important. It's giving you stuff in the graveyard. Maybe you want more creatures there for some reason. And then it's also putting cards in your hand, which you can use your hand as a resource and discard to some ability, or just the option to keep replaying creatures that maybe trigger something, especially right now with Mutate. So who the heck knows? This has a lot going on. All right, if you were looking for another card that you were going to be bothered by if you're not playing blue, well, the blue mages are definitely happy now. So getting a 5-cost card is a little bit on the high end for a lot of decks, but it's a 5-cost 5/4, which isn't necessarily bad, and it has flash. And then you also get the ability to counter an artifact or a creature. So it's not an all-encompassing counterspell, but obviously we're going to be playing a lot of creatures at this set, right? Like, you're going to be wanting to mutate things or whatever. So this is going to be able to counter a lot of things, and then you're going to get a real heavy hitter at 5/4. So pretty neat. It doesn't itself work anything in any way with mutate stuff, because once the ability happens, it just happens. You don't get a bonus. But the card itself could be reasonable as a late game kind of failsafe for a lot of things. I could see this card being played in a few different decks. Not sure how competitive, but it's definitely something you're going to have to think about before you go casting your spells freely. Okay, this thing is on par with probably being one of the more annoying creatures you're going to have to play against. It's a 2-mana 2/2, which it's a nightmare dinosaur, so it doesn't really fit into the particular decks as far as tribes or themes, but it does have menace. And interestingly, if you play multiple things with menace, which there's a few cards that are worth playing, now anytime something blocks one of your things with menace, they have to sacrifice one of them. So you effectively need to block with 3 things if you want to make sure to kill the creature you want in some cases. Like in this case, like sure, maybe you block with a 2/2 and a 1/1. You automatically have to sacrifice the 1/1, then the 2/2 just fights and kills it. Like that's the thing, but it puts you in a lot of situations where your opponent's going to lose a creature no matter what in these creature fights, where sometimes they're just doubling up to kill your menace thing so you don't have to worry about it later. And you get the option of pumping, so maybe you get to kill 2 things anyway. And it pumps all your creatures with menace. So that's the other thing. So this is an interesting card. Again, I don't know where the actual home is yet, and I think that's the fun thing I like about this set. There's a few cards, actually several cards, that I can't immediately identify where they go, which means we're likely going to see a lot of new decks trying to use these different mechanics, especially on the rares and the mythics, because they're very specific to either, like in this case, a certain keyword or a certain tribe or even a certain mechanic. So building around those is going to be really important if you want to utilize those abilities. So this is actually going to be a really fun time if you're a deck builder, like brewing galore if you want to try something new. Okay, I'm not going to lie, like this card is interesting because I'm probably going to lose to it at some point because I'm going to forget it's in somebody's graveyard. But the fact that you can play it for its mutate ability out of the graveyard is awesome. I mean, as itself, it's a 5-cost 6/6 with trample, which is pretty good. I mean, it's going to fight most things you're going to be up against, and it's okay. But being able to play it out of the graveyard, and interestingly, the cost is basically the same. I mean, it's still 5 out of the graveyard, and you get a little bit of flexibility on how you want to spend the mana. Like why, I don't know. That's kind of a weird R&D choice. I'm not sure if it was really necessary, but you know, who knows? Maybe they wanted to be where you could just play it out of the graveyard with just blue-green mana. Possibly. I don't know. But anyway, being able to just have that late in the game to just put it up on something and give something trample, or even just get it back out and upgrade a smaller creature. So maybe you have something on the board that's only like a 3/3 because this died earlier in the game. Okay, cool. Now you turn your 3/3 into a 6/6, and it has trample and whatever abilities that 3/3 had. And you'll get to attack with it because it won't even have summoning sickness anymore. So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff happening here with this card. I dig it. Not a lot to say here about the Sprite Dragon. It's pretty obvious. We all know how this is going to get used. There's already decks that it fits into. The card's just going to be around for a while and be pretty good. Nothing wrong with it. Just figured I'd include it and say, hey, be aware this card's a thing. Okay, I'm also a fan of this Grim Dancer. I mean, this card's actually pretty interesting in the sense that it's going to be a 3/3 with 2 abilities every time. Like, this is amazing on rate. Like, you can get Menace, Death Touch, or Lifelink. I mean, how often are you just going to want to be like, okay, this is a 3/3 with Menace and Lifelink, or Menace and Death Touch? You know, like, it's probably going to be Menace and something most of the time. But late in the game, maybe you just want Death Touch and Lifelink. Get to kill something and gain some life. I mean, there's going to be very few decks that this card's going to be bad against. And a 3/3 for 3 is pretty good. It is double black in the cost, so you have to dedicate a little heavy to the black color. But otherwise, this card's pretty solid. It's a strong uncommon. I think it's going to be very annoying to play against in drafts. But overall, real good. Snapdax is awesome. One, Snapdax is a sweet-ass name. But, man, it's really, really cool. Like, as a regular card, okay, cool. It's 3/5 with double strike. And that's actually going to be good enough in some cases. Especially for 4 mana. Like, not a lot to rap about on that card. But for 5 mana, you get to play it onto something else. So you give double strike to a different card. And it gets to deal 4 damage to a thing. And you get to gain 4 life. I mean, granted, you can't target your opponent, but being able to deal 4 to a creature or 4 to a planeswalker is pretty damn good. And you get a little bit of extra lifelink action out of it. This is a pretty sweet card. Again, with the color combination, don't know where it fits, but I'm about it. I think this would be a fun card to play with. Okay, now, if Vedric doesn't get played, I'll be really surprised. Like, it's a 3/3 for 3, which is really good. It also has flying and first strike, so 2 quality abilities on a 3/3. It does cost 3 different color mana, which is somewhat annoying, but very doable right now. And if you play it with its mutate ability, which is only 1 more mana, you actually get your option of playing a 3-cost thing from your graveyard for free. Like, I can see a lot of cases where this will get used. I mean, you have maybe you shoot something on turn 2, you play a creature on 3, on 4, you decide you want to play this, and then you replay the thing you played earlier on turn 2 or 3. Make so many little uses for this card. It doesn't even have to be built around, it's just a quality card in general that I think gives you some versatility later. The interesting thing, though, I think we'll see with cards like this is the decks that it goes into, how many creatures is it wanting to play so you can actually utilize the Mutilate ability at some point? Or is it going to actually get played with some modest number of creatures and more often than not just be a 3/3 as itself? But giving flying and first strike to another creature could also be very strong. So we're in for a wild time for Magic with cards like this. Okay, we were talking about earlier about a card actually giving you protection against sweepers. This does a pretty damn good job of that itself. I mean, whenever a creature you control without flying dies, return it and it comes into play with a flying counter. So like, what? This card's great. I mean, just being able to have infinite creatures effectively. You turn your ground pounders into flyers. Like, that's pretty good. This is a card that draws your opponent's attention for sure. It itself is a 3/4 flyer for 4, which isn't bad. I mean, this is almost a good protective card to play on top of maybe some type of humans or soldiers deck, even. I mean, there's a lot of different things I can think of to do with this card. It's very, very cool. It's got a neat design, too. I mean, the artwork's great. Like, not a lot to complain about this card. Really, really good mythic to have available. Okay, I felt like I would be a little upset, disappointed, sad, if I didn't mention Vivienne. Like, this card's really cool. Well, first off, it actually has 2 different relevant static abilities. One that you could always look at the top card of your library, which makes sense with the second one that you can actually cast creatures off the top of your library. So it's almost like giving you an extra card every turn if you're able to look at it, especially if you load your deck with creatures. It's also the first Planeswalker we've seen in a while that makes a sizable creature to block for its says. Previously, you had stuff like Garruk, but even the new Garruk costs 6 to make a couple of 2/2s. This straight up makes a 3/3 that also gets your choice of a couple of abilities, which is very cool. And then you get to just minus, and then whenever you play a creature, go search for a creature. So there's a lot of cool things going on. I mean, think about it in the sense of you play this, you make a 3/3 to go alongside whatever else you already have on the table. Then you play like a questing beast and can go get something else with haste, maybe a Gruul Spellbreaker, and now you're attacking for 10 damage on that turn. I mean, granted, that's a magical Christmas land kind of scenario, but even just late in the game, say your opponent sweeps the board, you're great. Every creature you play can effectively be 2 or 3 creatures, depending on what's on the top of your library. So lots of cool things just going on with this card. Really strong design. It's really neat that Vivienne is a new Planeswalker and still getting face time with quality cards that people will want to play. Okay, Dire Tactics. Not a lot to say, the card's just good. Gets to exile a creature with very few restrictions. Worst case is if you don't have a human, you're going to lose some life, but you just get to off whatever you want. Like, there's so many times that the Esper control decks want a card like this because, you don't want to get caught, well, this can only destroy this type of creature. This only kills a thing that's power 2 or less or 4 or greater. Like, this is just straight up kill a thing at instant speed. Pretty sure this is going to get played a bit. Even if it's not in standard, it might find a home in older formats, being a 2-mana kill card that a lot of decks could really find room for. Okay, the Mythos of Vedric is actually a pretty cool card. I just don't know if it has room anywhere. I mean, I like what it's doing as far as giving you the option to spread the damage out over creatures, even Planeswalkers. You can keep your opponent from attacking the next turn with what remains, depending on how you split up your damage. The problem, though, is just that there's so many other good sweepers right now, especially in white, which is asking you to use if you want to get full use out of the card. Like, maybe in some world there's a deck where, like, you need to kill a 5 toughness creature, and being able to just deal 5 from one spell is worthwhile, but I don't know. It's an interesting card, but I have a feeling it may not get to see much play until we get to rotation in the fall. Not much to say here. It's just Counterspell for 3 mana. But it does give the option of cycle, which is very good late in the game, where if your opponent's just not playing anything, or it's just you're dead on board, you can cycle it and just find another card. So probably replaces a couple of different spells in some decks, depending. Maybe Sinister Sabotage, like, I don't know. But it's a cool card to have around. Nothing wrong with it, just solid. Okay, there's a lot to like about a card like Skull Prophet. It's 2 mana, it's a 3/1, so if you're playing any type of aggressive strategy in those colors, you do get a sizable creature. It also gives you mana, so you can ramp up to play bigger stuff, which may matter if you want to get into playing the big mutate cost, or in something like Commander, you just want extra mana creatures. And this is awesome because it gives you mana on a sizable body. And then, just as a bonus, if you happen to want to get stuff in your graveyard for some reason, this helps you assist along that route. So there's a lot going on with this little uncommon. It's a pretty sweet card. Don't think it'll be valuable, but it'll definitely find some homes in a few different spots. Alright, General Kudrow is pretty neat, right? Okay, it's a 3/3 for 3, which is already fine. Then it pumps other humans. Also cool. But think about this, we already have a bunch of humans in the format in the form of knights. So if you decide to put this into that type of deck, it's basically another way to pump all your creatures, which is really good. And then it gets the bonus of whenever you have a human into the battlefield, you can remove stuff from people's graveyard, which we have some cards that already use the graveyard. You have stuff like Woe Strider, you've got Uro, you've got Kroxa, so being able just to get rid of those is super awesome. Or even remove something that your opponent might be about to get back with an Elspeth Conquers Death. That could be really good. And then as a bonus, you can sacrifice 2 humans to kill something big that they may be putting in the way. Like, this card's actually pretty versatile and really cool. I think this is going to have some impact. Very, very sweet card. I mean, how do you do a review and not just Sharknado? Now, I know this Obosh is in a foreign language, but what it does is you start with the companion card, which, by the way, for those you don't know, companion cards start in your sideboard, and you can have them, you have to reveal it, and it's just there for the course of the game. You can play it at any point like a creature, but, you know, it's just giving you a deck building restriction that usually gives you a bonus. In this case, you can only have things that have an odd casting cost. Not too bad, especially when you think about the red decks that already come out swinging with so many little 1/1s, because think about it, there were decks already playing Cavalcade of Calamity, but in this case, this says every card you have with a odd cost deals double damage. So there's already a lot going on with this card, but think about the fact that you have so many little 1/1s already that some of these aggro decks are playing, especially stuff like Fervent Champ, and then you add to the fact that you have stuff like Bonecrusher Giant that's also 3. So like you can easily build a deck around this and have it be useful. So very cool card. I dig it. I'm probably going to be a little bit afraid to see it a couple of times, but it's pretty cool. Okay, so this card's not spectacular. I just wanted to say, Otters and Magic, awesome. And it's a 2/2, so it's okay. Mostly going to be a limited card though, and the fact that like if you deal your damage to your opponent, you get to draw a card. Not strong, we've seen this ability before. Probably won't have any constructed applications, but just a decent mid-range common in general. Okay, so this bird goat's pretty interesting. One, that because it's a bird goat, which is weird, but it actually has some neat spots where you can find ways to deal damage to it and then just keep growing it, which is pretty sweet. I mean, think about something with like the Raptor from Core Set 2019. When a creature comes into play, it deals 2 damage. So you're starting with a 3/5 creature for 3 mana. Actually, it'd be for 1 mana because it also reduces the cost of other creatures that you play. So even something like that is very interesting as an option to have available. It also flies, which can be hard to block. I mean, there's just so much going on. And it's cool because it only worries about non-combat damage. So you can't block and then pump it up or whatever. But there's a lot of ways you can deal damage to your own creatures and still get it across the finish line. So very neat card. Don't think it's overpowered or anything, but it's just something cool to think about from a deck building standpoint. Okay, another thing to mention that some people may not know yet is we have variant art in this set as well. Kind of like we had with Eldraine, where you could get the special art and whatnot. That was very cool. Neat that that was an option. You know, we kind of did the same thing with Theros, where you got the constellation art for some cards. Well, in this case, we have this cool comic book style art, it's the only thing I can describe it as, that we have on several of the rares and mythics throughout the set that you'll be able to open in booster packs. So this is also a Gem Raiser, just a really crazy looking one. And I think it's kind of cool. I wouldn't mind having a few of these myself. And if that wasn't enough, we now have Godzilla and her friends in Magic. So it's kind of a crazy thing, right? Because you would think something like this couldn't happen, but here we are. And the interesting is these cards, if you notice the card name here, it has the Godzilla creature title across the top. So you have Godzilla, Gigadora, Mothra, whatever. That's going to be the name across the top, but the sub name below it is actually the name of the real Magic card it represents. So each of these are actually normal Magic cards in the set. They just have a cool overlay of a Godzilla themed thing. And I will tell you, I have worked on a separate project with the people who have the license of Godzilla, and it can be a little bit of a chore. So for Wizards to land this and do this is very, very cool. I think it's neat that this is a thing that's available that we can have, because people kind of joke and talk about like what ifs all the time. So it's neat that you can actually do that. Another thing I want to point out here that came up on my stream, we were talking about this card in particular, that the ability is worded very awkwardly. So in this case, you have a 5-cost 7/3 Trampler, but the ability is that lethal damage to creatures you control is determined by their power instead of their toughness. Now, the way that's worded, some people had a bunch of different assumptions, and I think because we've only had cards before that utilize creatures' toughness as their power to deal damage, but that's not what's happening here at all. Basically, is anytime your creature gets into some situation where damage would be dealt to it to kill it, it's just looking at the power instead of the toughness. That's it. So in this case, if somebody were to lightning bolt it, it would look and say, well, I have a 7 power, so I'm not dead. You need to be able to deal 7 to it to kill it. Now, if you have something that deals just, or actually gives it negatives for some reason, so one of the newer cards is from Theros that actually gives it -3/-3, that would still kill this because the toughness becomes 0 and to a state-based effect, it just dies. And any type of negatives like that aren't damaged, so we're not looking for lethal in that scenario. Cards that kill it still just kill it. So if you have something that, I don't know, just terror to kill it, fine, no problem, it dies. But it's interesting because, again, it kind of changes your deck building, right? Now are you interested in playing more 4/3s and 5/4s or whatever to get that extra point? I don't know, but you get to deal more damage, so it's kind of cool. But yeah, I think the set as a whole is giving a lot of cool things. And let's be honest, there's a lot of Magic fans that also love Godzilla. There's a lot of people who don't currently play Magic that like Godzilla, which is probably going to be a good boon for the game to draw people in. Whew, okay, that was a lot to get caught up on. A whole lot. They are coming quick with all the cards. So I'm sure I will add some on the next one of these reviews I do, maybe that I missed today that would still be interesting to talk about. I just don't want to have like this crazy 1 hour long video trying to talk about every card that's cool in the set. I think there's going to be a lot that's just open to discovery as well too. I mean, overall, I think the set's starting off to look very awesome. There's a lot of utility in a lot of different places. There's going to be a lot of new deck building. The mechanics are going to interact in a lot of cool and interesting new ways, which I think is cool. There's just a lot going on with this set, and I think it's going to be really exciting. You know, especially with everything else going on in the world right now, being able to hopefully come out the other side and have this to look forward to is going to be really fun for a lot of people. So I expect to see a lot of crazy combos, a lot of weird new decks, and I think we're going to be seeing that churn of standard decks especially a lot as people start discovering more ways to use each of these cards. Because again, we're in a situation where R&D's done a good job creating cards that are worded very uniquely and will work in ways that cards previously haven't. So we don't even know what's available to us. So that's pretty dang cool. But anyway, like I said, I'm going to try to keep up with these every day from here on out and doing some more of these. So if you like it, hit the like button, let me know so I can stay on top of it. And if you haven't subscribed, why not? Come on, hit the subscribe button and help me out. But until then, we'll check you next time.